Hey, Sarah Gale, and
Chad,
we are on here because we recognize that we are indeed an interracial couple. Did you know that?
really? I hadn't noticed.
Yes. And so we are. We are an interracial couple, and there are many other interracial couples out there. So this is for you. And it's just a time that we want to share with you some things that have been helpful for us because sometimes it's hard just living in the world, navigating the world when you might be one of the few interracial couples in your circle, perhaps, or you just have never experienced what it's like to be an interracial couple and you're now living it out. You have your kids and whatnot. And so although we are human, we're still human. We're still just like other couples. There are some unique dynamics, and so those are the things that we kind of want to touch on, and hopefully bring some support in.
Yeah, and I think some of those we became aware of when we were dating,
Yeah.
but some of those we didn't realize until we were married with kids.
Hmm.
Some of it is around opportunities and trying to figure out what is best for our sons, knowing they're not black, they're not white, they're mixed,
Hmm.
and how do they interact with the world, and how do we create a space so that individually we feel seen and safe and can thrive, and then how do we operate in spaces so collectively
Yeah.
we can feel seen and heard and thrive. And the reality is, as an interracial couple, there are unique things that we face. It doesn't make them better, it doesn't make them worse, but they
Hmm.
are unique to some of our stories. So, what are some
Yeah.
of those things that we have encountered, and then kind of what have we done to help?
Well, one of the things I just want to point out because it was almost triggering to me, and maybe you watching, you felt like, oh, when you said our sons are not black, they're not white, they're mixed race, right?
Yeah.
And that's the reality. That's what they are. In the past, and many people to this current day, they would say our sons are black because of just how they had to be reported in the past, and it had racist origins. But I think when it comes to that, like things like that, you have to decide what's best for your family. For us, we let the boys, well, first of all, we make sure that they know both sides of their culture. We live in a community that has a lot of white people. And so we don't really need to worry about that side. And culture overall is just fine when it comes to whiteness, right? But we are very intentional about the black side of them and helping to nurture that and helping them to see different examples of people who are black, different being in different environments. And but when it comes to us agreeing that they are mixed race, I don't call them black. And part of it for us is they are very light skinned. I mean, if anything, one of our sons looks Latino, and then the other one is very light skinned. And so for them, it's talking with them as they're older. They're 15 and 13 now, and it's talking with them to learn, okay, what do you feel comfortable with? What are you identifying with, if anything? And kind of making it be more organic. Oops, I just knocked over the mic. We're all good here though. Making it be more organic in the sense of what we're calling them. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because I know that's a big thing for people. Like,
I mean, I think early on in their childhood, there was kind of this realization that their life experience is not mine
yeah,
and is not yours.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
obviously for you, we have sons and they aren't girls, so
Mm-hmm.
that's different.
Mm-hmm.
But we kind of had that realization of, yes, we want to expose them to both,
Mm-hmm.
but also they're neither. They are
Yeah.
not. They're a combination, which is incredible and beautiful, and um, all this awesomeness to it, but
Yeah.
it's unique. And so for us, I think some of that was, well, we want to provide them environments where they're in, like you said, we live in a predominantly or a white community, so we don't
Mm-hmm.
have to work very hard for that. We
Mm-hmm.
just go outside.
Yeah.
Um, we are intentional about trying to be around family and friends that would more represent a black community,
Mm-hmm.
but also recognizing for them there's a different level of comfort when they're around mixed families
Yeah.
or
It's
other
interesting.
mixed kids,
Yeah.
because their experience and story more closely matches.
Mm-hmm.
There can be this dynamic of potentially accepted in both communities, but also rejected
Yeah.
in both communities,
Yeah.
and finding just how to navigate that. I mean, I think, like, on a practical level, something that we talked about when they were little is, what does it look like to put our boys in the best school possible,
Mm-hmm.
but also not have them feel like a racial exception?
Yes.
How can they
Yes.
feel
It's
like
hard.
they belong?
Yeah.
And that's challenging. Oftentimes, you know, you look at, oh, we found this. That might not be. There's going to be additional challenges for our family
Mm-hmm.
to exist in that environment and feel valued and cared for. So
Yeah.
these are just some of the different conversations, and there isn't like a one size fits all solution.
Yeah.
You know, different families are looking for different things in different seasons, but they are conversations.
Yeah. And so it's trial and error also, because once you know what the goal is, like our goal was always from the beginning, and even before we had kids, was to be in diverse environments, you know, and that goal just kind of shaped a lot of what we did a lot of times, and naturally the people we hang out with. Because, for example, here, you know, where we live, like Chad said, there are a lot of white families. And so it would be easy just to hang out with a lot of white families, but we intentionally position ourselves in environments and in conversations that are more diverse, because that is a value that we have. And so one of the things recently that we just kind of had to navigate through was where we were going to attend church. And we were at a church that was predominantly white, because that's our neighborhood again. And it was great. It was an amazing church. But even for myself, and I think to a point, to an extent, the boys, like when they would go to youth group, it's like we're the only ones. Like they're the only mixed kids. Although there were a lot of mixed kids, but there's still the representation of just the diversity that was missing, as far as Black, you know, as far as Latino, all of those things, where it was more, you know, our community actually has a lot of mixed kids, but it still matters as far as the diversity collectively, not collectively, collectively. And so that just wasn't there. And I think for me, this is what Chad is talking about, because for me, it's going to be different than how the boys are, you know, how they're engaging with their environment, because I'm a Black female, I'm darker skinned. And so I can't put how I feel onto my boys and what they're going to experience. I have to play it by ear and figure out what is best for them.
Yeah, and I mean, so ultimately it led to us looking for a different church home,
Yeah.
where there wasn't anything fundamentally wrong with the church we are a part of. We loved the teaching, the worship, we were serving, we enjoyed being a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when we transitioned to the church that we're a part of now, like from the very first time we walked in, all four of us had a collective, oh, this feels more like our tribe. This feels more like all of us have a space here.
Yeah, all of us. Yes.
And I think that was just a different dynamic of being like, okay, we can all be ourselves in this space. And I think early on, you know, by nature of our relationship, we were in white or Black communities, but oftentimes it would be one or the other.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh, here we're hanging out with this. Oh, here we're hanging out with that.
Yeah.
But it's not just, it became a value of diversity really because it's how we learned different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it started to increase my compassion and empathy and realize my experience matters,
Mm-hmm.
but there are so many different experiences, and creating that space for somebody else to share their experience and how they see the world and potentially share how they perceive the world sees them.
Yeah.
And I think when we're in diverse dynamics, it just makes us more holistic people.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's one of the huge benefits of being an interracial family. When we can navigate some of these conversations well, it just opens our eyes. Like I feel like our ability to connect with different people, even that fall outside of our own natural family dynamics.
Yeah.
There's just, it's like practice. And now it's like, oh, we can connect with, you know, maybe people that don't look like either side of our family.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things that I love now about being in an interracial family. While there's some challenges and struggles, there's definitely some benefits, like in terms of my personal growth in that area.
Yeah. And I think when it just requires conversation, you know, because for the minority part of the couple, whatever your mix is, there are different unique things that we go through, you know? And so like what we talked about at the church, like I was the one who felt out of place. And so it is my responsibility to speak up about that. And and sometimes I feel like as a minority person, we want to make it work. And then it's almost like I feel kind of schizophrenic sometimes. It's like, I want to make it work. Then I'm like, why do I have to try and make it work? I don't, you know, but I want to make, but it's like, why? Because I want to just be able to be in a place where I can just be myself. I don't have to even recognize that I'm the only Black person in the room, because there's a multiple array of people. And so that is what I want, but that is not always what I get. And so where am I going with this? I'm just kind of rambling. But I think that the point is that the minority part of the relationship needs to speak up. But then also with our boys, one of the things that we've done is we have really uplifted the voices of the minority part of the relationship. So we've uplifted Black voices, and we have also tried to put them in contact with Black people who do different things, who are brilliant, who are engineers, who are doctors, who are businessmen, you know, and we have boys, so a lot of it is men. But we've tried to put them in places and expose them to people like that, so that they can see the positivity of the culture, because there's a lot of negative rhetoric out there when it comes to Blackness and Black people. And we want to make sure that they can be proud of who they are, who half of them is, and that they are educated even on who they are, so that they're not surprised by the things that people might try and call them, by the things that they might encounter. So we have open and honest conversations regarding this.
Yeah, and sometimes with them, we've highlighted or shared something that we thought would be important, and they just say it's not. And you know, whether that's them just trying to dismiss a difficult conversation, or a conversation that requires them to think and engage, or it's just not. You know, sometimes as parents with like mixed kids, we might think something's important and they decide it's not. You know, and then I think you and I kind of talk about, well, it's, you know, they're kids. Sometimes it's like, you know, they also just want sugar and video games, but we also recognize that's not the best for them.
And they'll learn. It'll come up, you know, they'll learn these things, whether they want to learn it from us or, you know, out in the world.
But I think my bigger point was just having open dialogue. Yeah. And sometimes it'll hit, sometimes it resonates, and sometimes it's like, that I don't know that accomplished much, but the environment of conversations and openness is the desired environment.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure how organized this was, but I mean, I think we spent a lot of time talking about the kids and kind of some of the intentional things, just to be aware of, to have discussions about. And I think the biggest thing was the dialogue, keeping open conversation about race, about the environment you're in, about what you're exposing yourself to, about the goals of what kind of diversity you want in your day to day. And then there's much more we can talk about, but for now, I think this is a good start to the conversation. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just as you were kind of recapping, I think at our best, you talked about as the minority in the relationship, the minority in our community, your role is to speak up, to communicate, hey, I don't feel seen here. I don't feel valued, or to take ownership and communicate how you're feeling. I think as somebody who's the majority, typically when we're walking into environments, I would say if you're in that role, then at your best, ask those questions. Ask open-ended questions. Hey, how are you feeling? Do you feel seen? Do you feel valued? Good. Do you feel like you belong in this space? And then there's times where, like, we just have to trust God that we can find those spaces. Yeah. Like the church that we go to now, I'm like, where are all these people during? I'm like, where are you? Where do they all come from? In the middle of the week, it's like, and then we gather, and it's just diverse in terms of age and race, and it's so refreshing. Yes. And I'm just thankful that, you know, that we identified, and it took a couple of years, but we found a space that we love being a part of. Yeah. So I think if you are the majority, take ownership over creating that space and checking in periodically, because it can change. Like we went to the one church and we were all in, and then like you weren't. Stuff happens. Yeah. Sometimes we can anticipate this working, and down the road, it's like, you know, this isn't quite it. Well, let's keep searching.
And I did appreciate you asking questions and you being open to what I had to say, and looking at different churches, because of that, because of how I felt, even though we all enjoyed the last church, but now we find that, okay, there's a difference between kind of settling for something because it's like, okay, it's pretty good versus, wow, like I'm all in, like I can be myself. I see people who look like me. It's very different for me, and I'm an adult. So imagine how different it is for our kids, when they have more people who look like them, who represent them, but also just overall a diverse group of people. So
Yeah.
that's all we have to say for now. And we'll be back on here at some point with another interracial moment of conversation. Hopefully this helped, and please let us know if you guys have any specific questions, because we love to address some of those.